Hey, college success. Welcome to week 13 of the semester. The end is near. This runs from April 19th through the 25th. Before I hop into week 13, though, just a couple quick things. Heads up, I always do this for my 16-week courses. In weeks 14, 15, and 16, I reopen 1 week each week from the beginning of the semester. So week 14, I will reopen week 1. So you'll see for a part of next week, week 14, you'll have access to the week 1 video and the week 1 folder in case you missed any points at the early part of the semester. Oftentimes students might still be learning to navigate, or maybe they missed an assignment. And so if you need like a little bit of boosting, I do reopen those earlier weeks. So if you need that, take advantage of that. Also, another reminder, your final project is coming due very soon, especially now we're in week 13. So there's a whole folder for just your final project videos. When you click in there, there's your directions. Steps 1 and 2 have been uploaded. Steps 3 and 4 have been uploaded. And by the time you view this video, step 5 will be viewable. So all of the steps are in there. And then eventually I will also have like a review, just like a real quick recap to make sure that you're comfortable with everything. If you haven't started your final project yet, I really highly suggest that you do so. Look at those videos, look at the directions, let me know if you have questions. You can even send me, a rough draft if you want some feedback before it's due. I'll be happy to take a look. Okay, so this week we are in, as I mentioned, week 13. So I'm going to scroll down. We're in chapter 6. There are only 7 chapters, so we are almost there. So you can see there are 2 assignments this week. There's no discussion board. So when that happens, both of the assignments are due by Sunday and they count for week 13 attendance. If you only complete 1, it's half of your points. So we'll first start off by going to the materials folder. You can see we have our chapter slides. So I'm going to pull up our chapter 6 slides, and part of this discussion, I'm going to kind of show you some different resources and things to look into. So part of chapter 6 starts off with talking about creating an academic plan. What does that mean? Well, first, knowing who your advisor is or finding a mentor on campus, because there's lots of benefits to that person. They can help you with networking, getting resources, helping kind of determine your interest or values and abilities and how they align with your career match. So hopefully you know who your advisor is. If you don't, you can go into My Stark State, click on My Stuff, map My Academic Plan right there. It'll open up and give you your map page here. So I'm not sure if I showed this to you guys before. If I did, I apologize, but I always like to bring it up again during this chapter. MAP is a great advising tool because it lists all the classes you eventually have to take, the ones that you're currently taking, the ones that you've already taken in the past. And so you can help it with your advising, but it also goes over all this important information up here, your degree, your major. You always want to make sure that's listed correctly because everything is based off that. It's going to talk about, your academic standing, all your information, and your advisor. So your advisor information is right there if you didn't know who your advisor was. Hopefully you have already started thinking about summer and fall registration because it is open. So this would be a good time to contact your advisor and be like, hey, especially with all the deals we've got going on. It sounds like a department store, but there's like BOGO for summer, and so there's lots of kind of things going on because of COVID. The colleges making it a little easier for students to take more classes and get one class paid for. So it's a great thing to look into. In fact, My Stark State, if you go home to the home page, you should be able to see the announcements there, and you'll be able to look and see what some of that information is. Yep, here we go. Buy one, get one summer class. So that in particular, and they're probably going to have something similar for fall. All right, so going back to here, there's lots of benefits for your advisor and your mentor. You also need to know your curriculum requirements. What classes do you need to take? How far do you have to go? Do you need a bachelor's degree? Do you have to go further than that? So knowing your plan is really important. That's something, again, your advisor can help you with. So also knowing your degree requirements. So if you don't know your degree requirements, you can go to the Stark State homepage. Under academics, find your career community. Let's say that you are education major. I'm going to click on education. And all of these are set up in a very similar fashion. So it doesn't really matter which one you click into. It's going to give you some really general information, who to contact. Then at the bottom, it's going to have the more specific like degree programs. So let's say I'm going into early childhood education. That's going to give me a page that's specifically for early childhood. Then I click on courses, and here is my PDF that has all my classes listed. So this lets me know like, hey, this is how many credits I have to take. Here is, again, here is the suggested order if I'm going full time. So it's a really great tool to have and to be aware of so that you know exactly how many credits, what kind of classes, what kind of prereqs do you have to have in order to get that degree. So being aware of those requirements are really key. Also, knowing the difference between different types of online courses. Right now, we are taking an asynchronous class because you are completing the assignments on your own day and time. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no due dates, because there are due dates, but you can log in at 2 in the morning when someone else is logging in at, 10 at night. So asynchronous, whereas synchronous means you're meeting on scheduled days and times, but online instead of in person. So it's like a web class, but you're literally having a web camera there. And so you can meet with everyone at the same day and time. We do have both of those types here. Now, experiential learning. Some classes have that at the college and some don't. So you might get a chance to take a class like this. And there's not a lot of study abroad type experiences, but we do have service learning, and there's a lot of ways to link to internships. So you might have classes with this information, especially if you go to a 4-year school. If you do plan on transferring, you might see even more. But all of these are ways to kind of tie the real world with what you're learning in the classroom. The next section talks about networking, in particular, career planning. And so what is networking? So networking is establishing like relationships, both personal and professional, with others in your field or others in, in connected fields. So I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So while that's true, it's important to know things, you also, need to know people. You need to get your foot in the door. And so why do we network? Well, it's not only who you know, but it's who knows you, and kind of your work ethic and how you can kind of present yourself. And so one of those ways, and I know we've talked about career services before, but I'm going to revisit their website real quick. So if I'm at the Stark State homepage, I can scroll down to career services. And this is just another plug for our career services department here on campus. So they can help you specifically. We talked about internships, resumes, job fairs, and they also really talk about the importance of networking. And that also goes back to your advisor or your mentor. They can be part of your network, help build your network, as well as, joining clubs and organizations on campus. Those are also ways to build your network. So that's important, is, building your network and making sure that you establish those relationships and people know you, and that way they can kind of verify or write references or get you an interview or whatever that might lead to. Also, we want to make sure that we're creating a professional online presence. This time in our society, you apply for a job and odds are you're going to be Googled. You're going to be looked up, social media. I have sat on a few hiring committees at the college, and we do it at the college level. We look to see what kind of professional presence a candidate is presenting to the world, through LinkedIn, through any kind of social media site. And so we want to keep that in mind, that employers on social media, they do look for things like inappropriate pictures. Are you posting things that have to do with alcohol or drugs? Are you bad mouthing things? So these are all things you want to make sure you are aware of. And there's ways to make sure that you are being safe. Go through and just kind of comb through your social media. Delete anything that might seem inappropriate. And it also might depend on your field. Obviously, if you're going into the field of like education and health, and you want to make sure you have like a professional presence online, because those really are checked into. Other fields might not rely on that quite as much. Make sure you have a professional photo and email address. One of my favorite stories. Years ago, I had a student and his email address was poledancer01@yahoo. And so for some people that brings up like a pole dancer. He was a firefighter. Like he was a volunteer firefighter. He was going into like the EMS, the firefighting school. And so he thought that was a cute email address. Well, obviously on paper, someone might not know, oh, this guy is a firefighter. So you want to make sure you have a professional email address. Create a LinkedIn account so you can follow professionals in the field, and maybe that's something that pops up if someone searches for you. Again, this is important because people have been fired over their social media, and I have kind of this, it's hard for me to see these up here. Let me see. There we go. All right. Here's a few examples of when people have been fired. This right here is a waitress who badmouthed her customers who didn't tip her well. Well, she named her restaurant. And so obviously her employers didn't like that she was badmouthing her, the patrons, people that visit their restaurant. So she was fired. This juror asked for help over Facebook, couldn't make a decision. And so they took a poll. Obviously, that's a no-no. This cheerleader for the New England Patriots wrote a bunch of inappropriate, genitalia, swastikas. Obviously, she is no longer a cheerleader for the New England Patriots anymore. And there's just tons of examples. And there's been some examples today. Like, you still see people. I just read an article the other day. A professional football player made a comment that was racially insensitive toward the Asian community. And he's been facing those consequences right now. And so this is not something that happened years ago. It's happening today. People are putting things on Facebook and Twitter and their Instagram and TikTok. They're putting it all over, and they're not really taking a minute to think before they post, and they're facing that repercussions. And, good or bad, that's going to happen whenever you have that social media. So please just make sure you check and comb through. All right, so next part of the chapter talks about crafting an elevator speech. This is connected to networking. So an elevator speech is like a 30-second or so speech. If you've ever been to a job fair or have been asked just in general, tell me about yourself, and you're like, what do I say? An elevator speech kind of helps solve that. You just have it in your proverbial back pocket. It's focusing on a couple accomplishments, introducing yourself, hi, my name is, I am attending X school. My goal is to do this. I am an asset because, just really just highlighting yourself, kind of like a resume would, but out loud. And that way, whenever you meet people at a networking event or a job fair, you have kind of a little speech to go to that really helps identify and highlight who you are. Also, again, strengthening your network, ways to do this. I mentioned a couple of these already. Join organizations, join clubs, volunteer, stay in touch with people from your collegiate and your professional past, and some general job search tips, which again, you can definitely visit our career services page for a lot of this information. But making sure your resume is well written and put together, a cover letter, and really make sure that you're matching your resume to what the employer is looking for. And then the last little bit of our chapter talks about financial planning and knowing how to finance your education. And this talks about scholarships and grants. So I'm going to, again, highlight here. We have lots of money at the college under under admissions, paying for college scholarships. We have so many scholarships here at the college, just inside the college. And I'm not even talking about external scholarships that you would go outside of the college to get. There's a whole list of them here. And so there are some that are based on GPA, and you can see the due dates for a lot of these are coming up. There's GPA-based scholarships, but there's also degree-related scholarships. There are scholarships for certain demographics of people. And again, some of these just sit there and they're waiting for someone. And if it takes you an hour to fill out a scholarship application, or if it takes you a couple hours to write a scholarship application essay, and it lands you $500, I think that's time well spent. Okay, so check that page out. So it also, again, goes into financing education, how college really is. You're investing, you're making a return on investment. It also goes into establishing good credit. You want to make sure that you're establishing good credit or you're raising your credit. So if you don't know what your credit score is, you can go into Google and do a real quick free credit estimator. And the very first, not ad, but the very first actual result from MyFICO, you can go in, you don't even have to put your name or your social or anything. It's just going to ask you a series of questions. And based on those series of questions, it'll say like your credit score is approximately. So that's a nice way to just start to know what your credit score is. But our chapter will go into more depth. Like, what if you don't have credit? Like, how do you establish credit? How do you build that credit? Our chapter also talks about budgeting and then buying, with logic versus emotion. Okay, so that is your chapter. And as always, I encourage you to go in and actually spend time in the chapter itself so that you can get some more details on those particular topics. So now let's talk about your assignments. So again, 2 assignments this week due by Sunday. In the assignment folder, we're going to click. Here's your one associated with chapter 6. It's you expect me to do what? This is a networking assignment. If I had you in the classroom, we would actually do a networking activity where I would make you do like a speed networking type activity. And it's really fun. Most students really enjoy it, but we have to adapt it for online setting, obviously. So here is the assignment. You're going to kind of read this, and it's just going to talk about, again, networking, like job fair type information. It's going to talk about the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and pull yourself together. So read more information on each of those, what the 3 Ps are and what that entails. From there, it's going to give you a little scenario. So it's going to talk about Pradeep and his friend Bob and his friend Ray. So you're going to read about that scenario here and how there's a little bit of apprehension about talking to new people and going through this kind of interview process. So you're going to read the scenario, and down here is going to talk about those 3 Ps. Again, those are up here. You can read more about them here. Prepare, practice, pull yourself together. And it's going to ask you about the scenario. What did Pradeep do in that scenario? How did he prepare? How did he practice? How did he pull himself together? Now, part 2 is, what can you do when you go to a career interview situation or like a networking situation? How can you prepare? How can you practice? How can you pull yourself together? So this is what you're filling out, but it's based on and using all of the above information. When you're done with that, of course, you'll just click in and make sure that you submit it. Or some people like to just write submission. They like to just write the actual work there, and that's fine as well, whatever works best for you. The second assignment is your college resource reflection on MyStark State. And the reason I put this in here is because often people go into MyStark State, they go right to My Stuff, and that's all they pay attention to. Instead, what I'm encouraging you to do is go into MyStark State and really click around on the different tabs. So look to see, what is under the communications tab, what is under academic support, what is under the help desk. So click around, spend some time really investigating MyStark State. Again, you can look at the My Stuff tab, especially if you're not as familiar with it, but I am encouraging you to explore all of the tabs that you have available to you. And then for your reflection, please do not just write about the MyStark State has these tabs. This is what's included. I don't need a summary. I know MyStark State pretty well. I need to know what was informational or important or helpful to you. Make it personal. How did it help you? What was in there that is helpful to you? What was new or interesting or, going to make a difference on your career or time here at the college? Again, that's a paragraph long, 4 to 6 sentences, and you can upload it in a Word document or you can just click write submission. All right. So again, as a real quick recap, this week you are reading chapter 6 and you are completing those 2 assignments. You expect me to do what? And your college resource reflection. Those are your 2 assignments this week. Those are due by Sunday, and they also serve as week 13 attendance. Hope everyone has a great week. Bye.